What's going on? Thank you for tuning in once again. Still Knick fans, we are back. What's happening, John? How you feeling, brother?
Oh man, I'm good, man. Pleasure to be back. I missed out on last week, but I'm here today.
There you go, man. And yeah, last week was a great show. Thank you once again to
It
Danny
was.
B from the Morning Drive, our special guest last week. It was good conversation. But you're here this week, and this week we got
I made it.
another great special guest, man.
Yes, we
But you know
do.
what, John? Let me tell you something, buddy. Just want to let you know, just because Max Scherzer got hurt, he's out 6 to 8 weeks. Don't mean my Mets is stopping, but if we going, baby, don't think we stopping. I'm just letting you
Nah,
know.
I got you. I got you. I got you. Listen, we're
And
going through
kudos,
our own little hiccups.
yeah,
I'm,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not
Kudos
even
to your
speaking
Yankees, though.
on it.
You still, even though you still managing, you're doing well. You're doing well.
Yeah, we got trouble brewing somewhere, and I just don't want it. Hopefully it
Yeah, that's
just
okay.
goes
Don't
away.
even think about it. Don't put it in the air. It's okay. It'll come when it comes. It's all right.
Exactly. Exactly.
Anyway, yeah, man. But definitely, we do have another special guest this week.
Yes, we do.
Uh, Now, this gentleman, you may have seen him on other different podcasts in previous times related to the NBA draft. He's known as the NBA draft guy. He is on Twitter heavy, with a lot of good analysis and stuff. He's how do you say this? I would say he is interesting because he's part of something that we're going to get into, and I want him to explain what it is. It's
Okay.
called No Ceilings, right? But what's cool about it, right, is I don't know how many gentlemen it is. It may be 6, 7. I don't know, but it's a bunch of guys. Like everybody has their own thing. It's really cool. Like they're like Voltron. So I mean,
Right.
I'm sure when he breaks it down, he'll explain to exactly what it is. But I just think it's really dope, and I'm very happy to have him here. Like I said, it goes by the NBA draft dude. Mr. Corey Tulaba is in the building.
Yes, sir. Welcome, welcome.
What's good, fellas? I appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure to have you, bro. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, man, it's my pleasure. I mean, look, Knicks Nation has been very good to me through my short career. So it's anytime I get to chop it up with my fellow New Yorkers, I'm always down.
That's dope. That's dope. I remember I was just trying to think of where did I first see you. I think maybe it was on Knick Fans TV. Possibly. I think I saw you and you guys were doing some type of draft special or something of that nature. And I remember I was just listening to you and everybody else in the conversation. You had some really good insights. And in the back of my head, I said, you know what, later in life, I'm going to get him on the show. Right. And then when I
Right.
was looking, because starting to line up different guests, because now we're in the off season. During the regular season, we don't usually interview people or have guests, but in the off season, we do that. So I started to look at it, and I was like, "Oh, look, Corey. Yeah, I remember that guy." And that's when I reached out. So I'm glad you could be on. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
much
man, I'm excited.
appreciated.
I mean, hey, at any time.
Well, before we get into any stuff, I had the two questions. The first segue, which I almost asked you already before we even started,
Yeah.
was what do you do right now? Is heavy draft time. Like this has got to be busy, busy for you, crazy busy. What do you do when there's no NBA draft? The draft is over. Teams already got their players. They're playing throughout the season, like the downtime for you. What happens then for you?
So, once the draft is over, we'll get a short break. And then, you touched on no ceilings. We're all going to summer league. So we'll have, we have an Airbnb and we're going to do like a ton of content there, following all the guys that we just covered in the draft, getting to see them up close in their first professional setting. And then from there, obviously, the off season and this off season is different than the last few because of COVID, the off seasons have been fairly short.
Hmm.
So there was a lot of overlapping, but there's always something in the summer. So, it could be the FIBA tournaments, like the U19s or something where you get to see a lot of the guys in the upcoming class. So we follow that and we'll touch on that or, really, and especially now that we have no ceilings going the way we do, like we're going to hit on a lot of the high school tape for these kids, a lot of the AAU tape to kind of prepare ourselves and our audience for what's to come during the cycle. And then once, the college season starts, it's kind of, nonstop from there. And for the most part, like a lot of the people who get into the draft around now, they might not be as heavily invested in the draft as, a lot of like the really big draft fan community, which, there's this niche community that's really passionate about following the draft and player development all year round. So they'll follow us because at No Ceilings, we drop an article Monday through Friday. So there's something to be read about the draft in some capacity from the jump of the season until all the way through. We haven't missed one weekday yet, and we even wrote on some weekends. We have people writing multiple days sometimes. So we try to keep it going as long as we can, just like, I kind of figured that, I saw what a lot of the NBA content creators were doing, guys like you mentioned CP from KnicksFanTv, and taking and building a community of people that are so passionate about, the Knicks or the NBA at large. And I said, why can't we do that for the draft? There's a lot of people that love watching the draft, and let's blow it out and try to do it in almost a year-long cycle. So that was kind of been the goal. And, this will be our first full off season as a collective at No Ceiling. So we'll see what happens. But that's kind of it. We're going to try to follow the AAU guys, the high school kids, and break down their film and talk through it and see, who's ranked in the top 10 now and what the top 10 looks like. We'll compare it at the end of the cycle when half of the guys play their way out of the draft entirely because they were overhyped. So it's kind of cool to follow the whole cycle and the whole process.
I think that's super dope because especially now that I think in another year or two, right, the high schools are going to be eligible, right, at some point. Coming up soon.
They kind of moved away from that.
Okay.
Yeah, so they kind of put that on the back burner for now. I think maybe COVID had something to do with it, but one of the big holdups was that the Players Association and the NBA were kind of having a little battle about the NBA teams wanted access to medical information and background and stuff from these high school kids, because obviously if you're taking a high school kid, that's a big risk for your franchise, and they don't have to give that information to them right now based on the collective bargaining agreement. So it's going to be hard for them to kind of figure that part out. And also when those rumors were happening, the NIL stuff in college where players are now allowed to make money off their name, image, likeness wasn't happening.
Right.
There wasn't leagues like the G League Ignite, the developmental program the NBA has, or the Overtime Elite program. So now there's more avenues for kids to make money professionally without jumping straight to the NBA, without having to go to Australia or Italy or Japan.
Right.
So we'll see. I would say that that's pretty far out, but that was the rumor for a while. It was the hot rumor, right? Like this 2023 was supposed to be the quote unquote double draft because that's when the high school kids were going to be eligible. But that whole movement got pushed back a little bit.
That's interesting because I haven't heard anything. So you broke the news to me. I don't know if you broke the news to you, Ron, but I was still, in my mind, I thought they were still working towards that. But that's
unfortunately, I don't mean to cut you off. Unfortunately, now I know that it's true, and it's unfortunate because I didn't know that was happening. This is the second time I'm actually hearing it today. I heard it earlier. Pudge Nice, I was watching Sim's show, and he put it in the comments that they're not doing it. I'm like, what? I mean, I still had to figure this out if it's real or not. But now that Corey's saying it, I'm like, oh man. I mean, I kind of changed. Like, as fans, we've been looking forward to this for quite some time. This is interesting. So, oh wow.
But it's also still kind of good, right? Because with the changes that you were just speaking of, you have all these other avenues for these young players to be seen, regardless of whether they come straight to the NBA or not come to the NBA directly. But, now you have, and this actually will help you guys a lot as well, because now you have some time to sort of walk through all of these players and find out, like you were saying, who's going to be the real deal and who isn't, so some kids will fizzle out at some point, so that's pretty dope.
It happens every year. I mean, it's funny. I did, over the summer in the off season, I did this video where I was like, I'm going to get a couple of guys. We're just going to watch the mixtapes of the kids that ESPN ranked in the top 10 without really diving into their film and getting into the nitty gritty nuance. We were like, let's just base it off the highlight tape and figure out who's going to be in the top 10. And I went back and watched that video last week. and half those dudes aren't even projected to be in the first round anymore, and some of them may not even get drafted. So
wow.
Yeah, that's the risk of of messing with teenagers and from high school, and honestly, like, we got Shaden Sharp in this draft, and he's going to be the first kid who hasn't played any like college or professional ball, I think, since like 2016. Like Don Maker was the first like guy in a similar situation. So Shaden Sharp is kind of going to be a test case for the prep to pro thing coming back, and whether it's something that should work out or not, because there's a lot of mystery involved in that.
Yeah, wasn't it that the same thing for like a Mitchell Robinson who didn't really have a collegiate career? He played high school and then disappeared.
He went to Western Kentucky. I think the time frame for which he played, though, it was less of a time frame because he was on a normal schedule, and now everything, the schedules were really weird, like especially high school schedules due to COVID. Like in New York, even, like one of the high school seasons during COVID didn't start until like a week before, like we got the go ahead a week before. So it's something weird with Sharp's situation where the time frame from his last game and the circuit until the NBA is going to be, it'll be the longest time in between games since like Don Maker.
Wow.
Right.
Interesting.
It's going to be interesting. He seems like a talent, though. I mean, from everything you can see highlight wise,
He's filthy. He's nice. I'm very high on him, but there's no guarantees in the draft, and that's what makes it fun.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I have a couple questions. I'm not gonna hit you with too many about some of these draft prospects and who you like. But before we do that, since you kind of already, John gave the segue. And before I get into that, I never knew, Corey, what are you a fan of any particular NBA team?
Yeah, so I'm a born and bred New Yorker, so shout out to all my New Yorkers. But I'm a Bulls fan. So first game I ever watched was '93 Finals, Game 6. I was like 6.5 years old. Maybe I was about to turn 7. And I really didn't. I was too young to know what was going on. I was like rooting for whatever team was going to end up winning. I didn't even know Michael Jordan was like that. Like I thought I liked John Paxson because he hit the game winner, knowing Michael Jackson scored every other point of the quarter, right? But if the Suns won that game, I think I would have been a Suns fan ultimately because that was the first professional basketball game I watched.
How it all happens,
right?
Yeah. That makes sense.
And it was just bad timing because the next year, if it would have been, I could have been a Knicks fan, if I had just watched a year later and stayed true. But, I just felt like there was always something kind of cool because after Jordan retired, like, because a lot of my friends, and people from New York were like bandwagon Bulls fans during the Jordan era in the 90s. And then once it left, they started fading back to the Knicks. And I thought there was something like admirable about rooting for a team that was back in the gutter and trying to, climb their way out. So I always kind of enjoyed that. And, it was a tough couple of years after that until like 2003,
D-Rose.
2004.
Until D-Rose.
Yeah.
D-Rose there, yeah.
We had some Ben Gordon years.
Yeah.
Oh,
Ben
yeah,
was
good.
Ben.
Shout out Mount
Ben
Vernon.
got busy. Yeah, he got busy.
Okay.
Him,
right.
Ben and Heinrich, right? That was the Ben and Heinrich duel.
That's my guy, Kirk Heinrich. That's my guy.
Yeah.
If I'm in a pickup game, that's what I'm playing like.
Yeah.
Kirk
we were great.
was tough.
I just wanted to know because I was curious about that. So, like I was pointing to John's segue. Yeah. So apparently the rumor is starting to get a little hotter. I mean, I know I said this months ago and other people have said it too, but the fact that there's a rumor about it now is, I don't know, it makes me feel a little uneasy because we're closer to this, decision time. But apparently people are saying that it looks like Mitchell Robinson may be leaving the Knicks. And, that could be a big blow for the Knicks. As much as he might be limited offensively in certain things that we like him to work on, he's been great defensively. He's a very good, offensive rebounder. And quite frankly, I don't know if they're going to get somebody who can do what he does at this point. Like, unless you can't really, make up for what he brings to the team unless you've got money to spend and there's an availability for a center out there who can do just as much, if not more. So I don't know what they're going to do. It's just tough.
I mean, looking at it from a draft perspective, and I know everybody wants. I think there's a large contingent who's like, Knicks got to draft a point guard. There's some other people who are like, just draft the best player available. This is a very wing-heavy draft. I'm a believer in the fact that I think the Knicks need to get more like modern players, more guys who can play more than one position. I look at a guy like Mitch, who can really only play the 5. Julius really only plays the 4, which makes it hard, to then play him with Obi. Quickly, I think it's going to be hard for him in a playoff setting to guard more than one spot. So I'm a big believer the Knicks need to get a wing. But there are 2 guys that may be available at pick 11 that, maybe they can't fully replace what a more veteran player can give, but can at least do some of it because, at the end of the day, like Mitch's responsibility is still offensively to, rim run in transition, be a lob threat. He's not really stepping out, pick and pop, or he's not really doing a lot of creating. So there are guys like a Jalen Duren out of Memphis who has kind of tumbled down boards a little bit. There is a Mark Williams from Duke who's picking up steam as like in that 10 to 14 range. And I think Mark Williams, you can kind of bet on him to give you similar production to a Mitch pretty quick. I mean, he just had himself a combine day. He measured in at 7'2" in shoes with a 7'7" wingspan and a 9'9" standing reach. So we talk about, physical tools, like he's that dude is long, he's tall and long. So, but there's a lot of people who feel like drafting a center in the modern NBA in the lottery is kind of the waste of an asset when you could pick up a guy like Nerlens Noel, in free agency. So, there's a lot of different directions to go, but I agree, Mitch, for, as frustrating as it might be with the injuries, and he still is, when he's on, like, that dude affects games in a big way. I'm always a big believer in, like, as long as he's not getting offered a $30 million a year contract, like, you pay to keep the asset, and then if you need to, you move it later. But if he's unrestricted, is he unrestricted, or is he? Because he was a second round pick, so I know they usually have weird contract statuses.
He is unrestricted. Yeah.
Yeah. So it could be up to him, right? It could be up to him based on. So that makes it tough. But usually, at least the agents and the teams figure out a way in some situations to at least maybe do a sign and trade, get some kind of asset back. But I agree, it would be. Yeah, it would be tough. It would be tough to lose him. But I've also heard, like the Knicks need a stretch 5 as well on the roster, right? Like they need a little versatility in what they get from the position, especially because, Julius 2 years ago, dude was lighting the net on fire, but he's not exactly Klay Thompson as a shooter. He can knock him down, but he's not a consistent threat. I like Obi's shot. I buy it long term, but he's not somebody that you're going to rely on as a shooter day in, day out. RJ, same thing, right? So outside of quickly, maybe Grimes, guys like that, you're not going to get a ton of consistent shooting. Derrick Rose is going to be back. He's not a long-range guy, right? So there's definitely need a little bit of shooting. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with the center spot.
Right.
Yeah. John, how do you feel about, possible life after Mitch?
It all depends on what we do. You know what I mean? In my opinion, it's like we have to see how the chips fall. Again, we could go chase, like you were saying, the Dookie. Mark Williams is his name, the young kid. If we go after him, that's a possibility. I would like to see the Knicks go for more talent, look at talent preferred. Like overall talent, get your best option out there, if that's a Ben Mathurin or if it's someone else like around that area. I would prefer to go with someone who got a little bit more skill because that fits more of today's NBA. I know, what was it, the year before, the draft prior, there was conversations or rumors that Coach Tibbs was asking for long-armed wings, you know what I mean, who can play both sides of the court. And so if you can sort of gather those type of players within this draft, and let's go after that. As a Knicks fan, though, we've been harping on a point guard forever. You know what I mean? I mean, since the Mark Jackson, Rod Strickland days, and we haven't gotten one. So I wouldn't be mad if they went in that direction either.
So, I mean, I don't know. Here's a question, right? Who do you think, knowing everybody that's in the draft, and I know they say that this draft is one of the weaker drafts in recent years, especially after everything that came out of last year's draft, which we still haven't seen all of it come to fruition yet. Who would you say is the best overall talent in the draft, like top to bottom?
So, one, I think that there's a misconception that this draft is weak. I don't think it is. I think sometimes, you know, it's like anything else. Something gets said early on, and then it just kind of sticks throughout the process, right? And early on, it was, this is a weak draft, and as you mentioned, like it's almost like going on stage after an opening band or an opening artist that killed it, and like the next artist is like, damn, I got to follow up that, right? Like they're following up the Cade, Evan Mobley, Jalen Green draft. So by comparison, it was always going to be labeled that. But I think, one, it's crazy deep with like solid, you know, players that are going to potentially be in the league as role players for a while. And I think that's important. Obviously, the top of the draft, the lottery, you look at your star hunting. But down the line, like there's going to be, I think, a lot of pros because now coming in, like kids, there's just so much talent coming into the league year after year. And then at the top, I think there's a lot of really talented kids up there too. So I personally don't think it's weak. I don't think it's as strong as last year, but I don't think it's weak. As far as who I think is the most talented guy, top to bottom, that's a loaded question because my number one guy is Chet Holmgren. He's been my number one guy for a while. If you look at the advanced stats, he had one of the best freshman seasons like ever, like basically on par with Zion and Anthony Davis. So he won a lot of games, proved a lot, looked like he could play a modern game. And that's on top of the fact that I really don't even think he got to show much of his bag. Like if you watched him in high school, some of the stuff he was doing, I had a high level scout text me the other day, like unprovoked. He was like, spent a couple of days with Chet, like keep all your stock. And then also unprovoked, he was like, I worry about Paolo. So I would say that Paolo should be the consensus guy in the class. He should be. Right. You look at him, 6'10", 250, handles the ball like a guard, you know, like play makes. You know, he's not like the best outside shooter in the world, but he's good enough that he's a threat out there and he's going to knock down shots if he's left open, and he could even hit a shot with a hand in his face. But, you know, and I saw him a couple of times this year live, and, you know, I left, sometimes he would like be like, oh my God, he looks like Chris Webber out there. And then other times you're like, man, this dude is giving me Ben Simmons vibes. Like he's about the limelight. Like he's not he's not ready to do the dirty work. Like he just wants to, you know, he wants to show up on draft night and you know, be in a suit and, you know, like be on Instagram, which, you know, happens a lot of these kids. So talent for talent, though, I think Paolo's the most talented kid in the class, because when you match his physical tools with how skilled he is, it's like, I mean, it's next level stuff, because he's legit that big. Like I've seen him up close. That dude is a monster. And there are the physical concerns that people have with Chet about his body holding up, right? Like Chet does a lot of freaky unicorn stuff too, but people have the concern about his frame. I'm a little less concerned because I think the NBA nowadays is more about like length, skill, versatility, feel, IQ, rather than like, you know, outside of Jokic and Embiid, there's not too many big men that are really banging down on the block anymore.
Right.
But yeah, Paolo, from a strictly talent perspective, I think it's Paolo. It's just the question mark of how bad does that dude want it? And I don't know that. I don't know him personally, but, you know, he doesn't have great intel from things I've heard. And, you know, I've seen him live. I've seen both sides of it, when he looks great and when he looks disinterested. So, you know, it's going to be interesting, the situation he goes to and how much that affects him and his career trajectory.
Right.
You know what strikes me with Paolo is like sometimes I wonder if he already has maximized his ceiling. It's like he reached his full potential because he seems like he doesn't want to get better, right? He seems like when he's on the court, he's like going through the motions, and he does his thing, but it's almost like does he have it in him to want to be the best? It almost seems like he's okay with just being where he's at. You know what I mean?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think that's what people have to figure out and part of it is tricky too, because in college, one, that Duke team's loaded. It's Coach K's last season. At times he looked like he was a corpse on the sideline. I went to the ACC tournament at the Barclays Center against they're playing Miami, and he ran the same exact play probably 10 times in a row down the stretch, and it wasn't working. It's not like he was just killing them and he kept going back to it. He just kept using his guards to run this double drag screen, and Paolo's at the elbow, and he's as one of the screeners, and it's well, then it's on the guards to get him the rock too. So There is part of it where it's he's going to have the ball in his hands. He's going to be a primary initiator. A smart team will use him like Jason Tatum, Luka, one of those big jumbo wings at the NBA level, whereas that wasn't really his role. When he had the ball in his hands, he did show some pretty impressive playmaking flashes. He made strides on that end throughout the course of the year, but I also felt like as the year went on, he stopped playing defense as much, because there were times at the beginning of the year where he'd be on an island with a quick twitchy guard, and he's just devouring them, locking them up, clamps, and you're like, this dude's 6'10", 250, and he's staying stride for stride with these guys. But then there were times at the end of the year where you're just he's playing Ole defense. He's just letting them blow by because he's trying to get a block. Right. He's trying to get the highlight. So that's what's hard with guys like that, because it's the carrot that's being dangled in front of you, where it's this dude could be a superstar. He could be a superstar.
If he only has to want it.
And he's always going to be good enough. I think it's probably a lock that he's an all-star one day, right? But is he going to be good enough to get you over the hump, or is he going to be that guy that ultimately might get you fired as a coach or as a GM? And I remember I was talking with Alan Hahn at one point, and we were talking about during the 2020 draft, and he's like, I always advised teams to stay away from the might get you fired guys, and he could be a might get you fired guy.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, the thing is, when I look at Paolo, I hear you. I
hold on. So let's say that again. I like the way you said. I like the way it rolled off your tongue. Let's hear that again. When
I look at Paolo. I think about that as well. I look at him and I say, I don't know. Now the thing is, he's got 2 inches over this guy, but I'm he can be a Tobias Harris, or he could be something greater. At his worst, he's to me, he's going to be Tobias Harris at his worst. And that's not saying something. That's not a knock on Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris has been really good in the
Long
league
Island
for
legend.
years.
Tobias Harris.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, that's how I look at his game, and his footwork is phenomenal. So he definitely he can move out there. He can do a lot. So we'll see. And he's a Dookie, and I'm a Duke fan. So I'm wishing him the best. But we'll see.
He gives me a lot of the Grant Hill vibes because of his skill level, but his length just takes him over the top, right? That length, that size.
6'10", man.
But can move like a Grant Hill, and it's he could maximize his ability and get better. He's just got to want it, and we don't know until he gets into a team. And like you were saying, Corey, is depending on the team he gets drafted by will depend on how they use him. Are they going to roll with him as their number one, or they're going to use him in some other way?
Do they have a track record of development? If he goes to the Kings, who's going to feel good about that? I wouldn't feel good about that. But I've heard, I had somebody tell me, don't be surprised if a guy like Keegan Murray goes ahead of him. If he drops a little bit, if somebody drops, from what I've been told, it would be Paolo Banchero. And you look at him, and on the surface, that should never be the question. But it's been the question with him since high school. So at a certain point, do you change? Do people change? And you look at it, you're like, when I was 17, 18, I'm a totally different person. So yeah, people do change. But I've also never been told that I'm the coolest guy in the world, the best at basketball. Like, I don't make it, I'm perfect. Like, since I was a young kid either. So
Right.
it's going to be his development path is going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, that was the
Well,
thing
you
with
know what?
Mitch, right? It took him some time to sort of mature a little bit. Like he started to get it now, but early on, the maturity level wasn't quite there yet. So
Yeah.
it happens for young players.
And that actually is my concern with a guy like Jalen Duran.
Mhm.
I don't know if I, as a Knicks fan, want to see the Knicks go through that whole thing of dealing with a raw talent like that again. Like, at some point, you know what? To me, he's a carbon copy of what we thought Mitch was coming out, when we first got him in the second round. Granted, Duran might be a notch above him, and his ceiling might be higher than Mitch's, but I don't know. So I'm so torn on who would be better. Like if the Knicks had a choice and it had to go between a Jalen Duran and a Tara Eason, I don't know who's better for them at this point. It's really, that to me is really confusing and tough for me to understand. How do you feel about what do you think about Jalen Duran and his skill set and like in comparison to like a Tara Eason who may be a little better suited right now? I don't know.
That's a tricky one, and it's a situation that the Knicks might be staring at on June 23rd. They might have the opportunity to make that decision. I'm actually a pretty big Jalen Duran fan. I've been a fan of him for the whole process. Early on, and it was predictable. Like in the draft community, everybody before the season starts, everybody like loves the centers that may be great, and then the season starts and they play like a center, and like everyone's like, oh, I hate centers. Like we don't use centers anymore anyway. So it was predictable, and I was like, yeah, but like this kid is, he's a beast. Like again, I saw him up close too. I saw him at the Barclays Center earlier in the season, doing like these ridiculous windmills where his head's at the rim and layup lines type stuff, had a ridiculous block. And the thing about him that's really intriguing is like right now it's May 23rd, like he reclassified. So he should be preparing for his senior prom right now. And instead he's preparing for the NBA draft. Like he's supposed to be in high school still. So what he did this year at Memphis, he did as a high school senior, which there's something to be said about that because his teammate Amani Bates did the same thing, and Amani Bates stunk the joint up. Like he was really bad this year, and you look at it and you're like, well, he was supposed to be in high school, so to be expected. But like Jalen Duran was good. Like he had a solid year, and there were questions with him going in the beginning of the year, beginning of the season, like does his motor always run hot? Like, and you never want to hear that from your big man. Like, does he have a motor, right? Like that's like a red flag. But as the season went on, that motor, that car was starting. Like it was running, and he really came into his own and made a big impact. And you started seeing like, I compare him to like a modern Jermaine O'Neal, maybe a little bit of shades of Bam Adebayo, because he started showing some passing flashes. He was stepping out, knocking down like 18-foot jumpers with confidence. And Memphis's point guard situation this year was just a disaster. So it's like he's doing a lot of this without point guard play, with not a lot of space. You figure in the NBA, he's going to have more space. He's going to have somebody who knows how to get him the ball and pick and roll, and doing what he does. And then defensively, he was very impressive. He was able to come out, hard hedge and recover. He was able to switch on the guards, come over on help side, obviously, bang in the post, do all that stuff. So I thought he was impressive. I actually think for him, like, the Knicks, like I'm a Tibbs guy. I believe that he's a good coach. I know that fans are out on him, but he won Coach of the Year last year. He was great with the Bulls. He helped the Boston win a championship. And while he may be stubborn, and that you could argue that was a long time ago for some of it, like he's a guy that expects you to learn the game and play it the right way. And for a player like Duran, who might be a little raw, especially at his age, like you want that. You want accountability. You want him to develop good habits. Even if it's frustrating in the short term, it's something that you look 4 or 5 years down the line and you're like, if he would have just been able to have free reign, maybe he doesn't play as disciplined as he does. And then you have a vet like Taj, who's like, you gotta have a guy like that in your ear as a young kid. So I don't think Duren would be a bad outcome for the Knicks if that was they were moving on from Mitch. But it's also like this isn't the right team context for him to develop either, because it's a tough fit with Julius. Same kind of thing that the Knicks have been dealing with, where he's not going to play multiple positions, so he can really just get minutes at the 5. Whereas Tari, who's older, like Tari's going to be like 22 next year, like as a rookie. He's a little older, even though he's a sophomore. But he's when you're looking at like what the modern NBA looks like, he's what it looks like, right? Like 6'8", 6'9", 7-foot wingspan, can guard 1 through 4, maybe even switch on to some small ball 5s, gets in the passing lanes, blocks shots, knocks down 3s at a decent enough clip, attacks the rim. The versatility of a modern day wing. He's almost what you're expecting like Cam Reddish to be. Like that's what, me, like personally, like Cam, I know like I've gotten a lot of flack because, I'll be like Cam, to me, Cam hasn't improved since high school. He was inconsistent at Duke, and he would have games where Zion was out, right? He had like 30 points in that one game, and then he'd disappear, right? And then in Atlanta, it was the same thing. And his talent is so tantalizing because when it looks good, it looks great. He looks like T-Mac when he's got it going. But then he'll also just disappear, and he'll take bad shots, and as pretty as the jumper looks, it won't go in. He's barely shot over 40% from the field in his career. The defense, admittedly, is very good. Like, I think he's a good defender. It's not to say he's not a valuable contributor, but he's not like, I don't think he's like an all-star. Where like Tari, like he's got the potential to still be an all-star because he hasn't entered the league. You haven't seen what he is, and I mean his college numbers were absurd. Like coming off the bench, like he was putting up like godly advanced stats, and his steal percentage, block percentage was crazy for a college kid. So, every time I talk about him, I'm just like, damn, like I feel like I am sleeping on him a little bit because he was so productive, and he got better during the course of the year too. Like his jumper wasn't going in the beginning of the year, and he finished at like 36% from 3, like and 80% from the line. So I'm a big fan of Tari Eason. A lot of people question him, but to me, he's the modern NBA. That's what it looks like. So it's definitely a hard decision to make, just because it's like that youth that Duren has. He has so much runway to improve, where like Tari's probably closer to what he may ultimately be. Maybe, right? Traditionally, historically, when you look at player development, because he does have the extra 3 to 4 years on him.
Right.
But again, it's the versatility and how does he fit in the modern NBA. And Tari is, if you took the names away and you gave a description of each player, you would pick the wing.
Yeah.
Right.
And I just wanted to say this real quick and get to the chat, and then I want to allow John to ask, his questions, because I got a bunch stored up. I'm good. Whenever I'll just jump in. The other thing about, and you said it, like the thing about Tari Eason is that it's so impressive to me is like, and I look at him differently. So I pretty much have a guy that the Knicks can pick for whatever position they want if the guy's there. And there's a chance they could be there. But with him is the fact that you said it. He did this coming off the bench. So I'm like, that makes me look at him totally different. Like this guy, he might be something special given the opportunity. Yeah. And if he can earn any decent amount of minutes with the Knicks, I'm sure he's going to show that he belongs out there, and that it'll go from there. But that's one thing. We'll see.
He's got Kawhi hands too. He's got Kawhi hands.
You know what? We have a draft series that we're doing now. We just did. We're doing a 3-part series. We did part 1, and my guy D Poetic. He mentioned that because he was looking at all the measurables. Right. He said, "Yo, the dude's got Kawhi hands." I was like, "Yeah, that's crazy."
He's got Kawhi hands.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's a real thing, man. That's one of those things you just can't, like. That's unteachable, right? It's God given. Yeah. So you gotta look at those things. You gotta look at those things.
Absolutely. Shout out to the chat. And let me just go down the names real quick. We don't have many to get through. I just want to holler at everybody. Thank you for tuning in, guys. Thank you for putting love in the chat. Jarvis LaFleur, Angel Torres, Geraldine McIver, Ice Mike 69. He said Knicks are trash, but salute to everyone. Well, thank you for tuning in, and I'm sorry that you feel that, but I'm glad you tuned in. Dripmore's in the building. What's good? Subliminal 209. What's going on, brother? IQJ, Tattoo Sports. I'm gonna come back to you, Tattoo Sports. I see what you've been saying. Who else? Did I miss anybody? Canal Ban Lauya. What's going on, brother? So, and let me get back to Tattoo Sports, because like he's been screaming for us to read what he put in the chat. He said, any thought on Kai Soto on Knicks in the Knicks workout? I don't know if you're familiar, Corey. Do you happen to know any information about Kai Soto's workout with the Knicks? How he did? Because he's trying to get an update. I don't know.
I just read the like brief report on Twitter that maybe from Knicks Daily. I saw the tweet that he possibly was working out or he worked out. Let me tread carefully here on the Kai Soto internet army, because I don't want them, coming to the channel and spamming it up, because he's got the most. Kai Soto's got the most loyal fan base on the internet. Yeah, man, crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, you mentioned just tweet out Kai Soto. That's it. Just tweet it out and see what happens. Just you're gonna have people in the mention. I don't know if it'll be good or bad.
We should tweet out.
No context. But
we should put out on Still Knicks Fans Universe. We are paying attention to you, Kai Soto.
There you go.
I'm telling you.
We see you, Kai Soto.
We see you.
That's it. I'm telling you, and you're gonna. They'll come. They'll come. I don't have any information. Honestly, like Kai Soto hasn't really been a name to pay attention to in the draft community. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's something the Knicks fans should really, worry about too much. I mean, if there's any Kai Soto stuff, I'd imagine it's some kind of second round thing, and who knows. But to me, it would be a marketing thing. I don't know. I don't know if he's an NBA prospect at this point in his career, So, but he's got a rabid, loyal fan base that is willing to make sure that he makes it. So, so we'll see. We'll see. It might be a Knicks for clicks thing, that report. That's what it might be.
It might be.
Gotcha. I got you. I know the only thing that I saw that was really, and I haven't seen a lot about him, but I just know that I believe he's lefty, and he's 7'2". Yeah, he's a tall kid. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he can shoot a little bit. He's got a good highlight reel. He's got a good mixtape.
Yeah. Okay. All right. John, go ahead, brother. Whatever questions you had.
I legitimately, I think the one question I did want to ask is sort of when you start looking at these players coming out of college, coming out of the G League, like what are those few intangibles that you look for in a player when you start deciding like where you think they will be ranked or, in like upcoming drafts?
Yeah. So, I mean, where do I start? One, did they pop on tape? That's the first thing. Like, do you notice them on the floor? That's the first thing. Sometimes you'll be scouting somebody, a game, and you're like, is this dude out there? Like, what's going on? What am I watching? Right? Like, can I get to the action, please? So that's the first thing. I'm big on like kinesthetics. I'm big on how they move, and there are just certain guys where I look at them and I'm like, I could watch him for a minute and I'm like, he just moves like an NBA player is supposed to move. Now, you have to continue to watch the film because you could watch Cam Reddish and come to the conclusion that's how an NBA star is supposed to move. So you have to then dive into the film. Intangibles, like a big intangible guy in this draft is Keegan Murray. So like I'll go, I probably saw like a third of like the top 60 guys live this year. And I saw Keegan Murray against Rutgers, right behind the bench. I'm watching him work out. beforehand for an hour, and I'm watching like, how locked in is this dude, right? Like, what's his preparation like? Is he, just going through the motions of the workout, or is he like really trying to break a sweat in workouts to get into a groove, right? Is he locked in? Is he messing around with his teammates? And this dude was like, he was more locked in than anybody I had watched this year. Like, he was from the jump, every shot with a purpose, game speed, trying to get better. So when I'm at a game, that's the kind of stuff I'm looking for. I'm looking to see how they interact with on the bench, in the huddle, just little things that maybe you can't pick up on film. And then on film,
Right.
like, I'm big on like, how are they defending not even on ball, like off ball? What's their off ball defense like? Because I think that says a lot about your basketball IQ, is if you can, do little things like, if your man is in the weak side corner, like, are you hugging him in the weak side corner, or are you underneath the hoop in help, knowing that you can rotate out to your man, right? Like, are you going to be able to pick up on defensive principles at the next level that are going to be, hard to figure out if you don't know them at the college level or at lower levels. So that's like the technical stuff, and then the intangibles, like I said, stuff that I look for at the game and whatnot. Are you diving for loose balls, stuff like that? Honestly, like, basketball's simple. Basketball's a simple game. So to me, I'm just looking for the obvious, really.
Right. So I know you mentioned if the Knicks lose Mitch, which is a very high possibility. A guy like Duran, maybe a Tyra Eason, which is a little lower as far as height and plays a different position. Maybe Mark Williams. A lot of people are high on Mark Williams. He can be a solid, serviceable guy. Maybe, I don't know if he's as good of a scorer as Wendell Carter, but maybe a Wendell Carter type. And that's nothing. I like Wendell Carter a lot. I thought his game translates well to the NBA, and he's shown, at least in Orlando, he's been really comfortable and done good things there. So my question is, say, because that doesn't necessarily determine it, but okay, say we keep Mitch stays, we're fine at center, we don't got to really worry about that. Who do you think the Knicks should go with at 11? Who would realistically be there? Because things change from week to week quickly right now. I mean, everybody was so in love with Dyson Daniels. I love that kid, and it looks like everybody else does too. Because now they're talking about he might go top 5, top 6. Like, sheesh.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you have good reason to love Dyson Daniels, because he kind of solves a little bit of everything. He solves the point guard problem. He solves the big, switchy, versatile wing problem. He solves doesn't have to dominate the ball, can play off Julius and RJ and Derrick Rose. He solves basically every problem the Knicks have, or not solves, but he patches some stuff up. And
that's it. We're trading up. We're trading up.
Like,
that's it.
But realistically, who would be there that I think fits? To be honest, I think that there's a lot of guys that are talented that are going to be available. If as guys like Dyson rise, that means there are guys like a Johnny Davis who fall. Now, Johnny isn't like exactly the big switchable 6'8" guy, but he's a guy that I think is, ridiculously talented. Reminds me a little bit of Devin Booker, a little bit of like a smaller Joe Johnson. And then there are kids like Jeremy Sohan, who, I know Berman just wrote a piece on for the New York Post, and really I know that because he used one of my tweets in it, and somebody tweeted at me and I read it. But I know he likes Tibbs and his game, and I love Sohan because when you talk about all of the things we spoke about, like, that's what that kid is too. He's the big, there's a big like faction of it's like WCW versus WWE in the late 90s of Sohan versus Tari Eason, because they're somewhat similar but they're different. But Sohan is the younger version. He's like 18, 19 years old. Probably he's bigger than him, but they're very similar games. So Sohan, I think, would be an excellent get. If Mathurin fell, I think Mathurin would be great. The way that he plays off ball, he's a plus athlete, get up and down in transition. He doesn't need the ball to dominate, but I think he's got some untapped potential with the ball in his hands, maybe some Victor Oladipo stuff. So he's a guy that I like for New York. A lot of people think AJ Griffin might drop. I've heard that his medicals are fine. Even though a lot of people are worried about it. From the intel I have, it's a little bit overblown. I'm personally a big AJ Griffin fan, but I know that some people are worried about him because, he was rough defensively at times, which, he's like one of the youngest players in the draft, and he, was injured for 2 years in high school. So he doesn't have and there was COVID. So he doesn't have a lot of high school experience playing ball. So it's not to be unexpected that he wasn't perfect there. But I'm a big AJ Griffin fan. Malachi Branham, that's a guy. That's a name I would pay attention to.
That's the name that I've been hearing a lot. All the past 2 days, I've been hearing that name everywhere.
Played at St. Vincent St. Mary, LeBron High School. Yeah, he's Ohio State. Coming into the year, the Ohio State prospect that on people's radar was E.J. Liddell, the power forward, who I also love, but he's probably not a guy Knicks fans or 11 would be a little rich for E.J. Liddell. But Malachi Branham kind of came out as just probably more of a prospect for next year. And then he just had a stretch where he was just getting buckets. People were like, all right, guess we can't really ignore him now. Mm-hmm. And he's basically one of the most efficient players in the draft at every level. Isolation, pick and roll, off the catch, at the rim. You go on Synergy, his percentiles are kind of crazy. He's young, he's long, I think 6'5", 6'10" wingspan. Really reminds me of Chris Middleton. He's not as tall as Chris Middleton, but the way they get their offense is very similar to me. So again, he's a guy because he's got a 6'10" wingspan, 6'5", 6'6", pretty good frame. I could see him playing next to RJ. He could play next to Quentin Grimes. He could play off of Julius and with IQ, with Derek. He could kind of play anywhere in a lineup. I think he'll be able to guard 1 through 3. So he's switchable in that regard. And I think he's a guy that he's really going to be a sniper in the league. He's really going to be able to get his at multiple levels. And I think that's important for this Knicks team is to get some shooting on the squad. I like Grimes, I like IQ, like I said, but every team needs more shooting. You need guys that are going to be able to do it consistently. And I think he's going to be able to do that. And I think that he's one of those guys that you can go to at the end of games. And, I know that right now, Julius is definitely going to get his shots at the end of games. RJ has deservingly so has earned the right to be one of those guys, but you need more than one guy. And I don't know what Julius's future is, but I think he and RJ could play pretty well together.
This is the question. So, this, and I know Sim, on his draft special he was doing earlier, he was highlighting Malachi Branham, and I'm going to look at some video about him later when we finish this up, because I'm not that familiar with him. But that's interesting. This kid sounds like he's got something special, good talent. So I'm wondering, because he's 6'5", and I think he should definitely be there at 11, I would assume. And then you look at a guy like Johnny Davis, who may fall and be there at 11. Who seems to have the better game as far as talent-wise between Branham and Johnny Davis?
Man, it's tough. Johnny Davis, I think I would rate him higher. There's nobody in college basketball that had the load on his shoulders that Johnny Davis did. And Johnny Davis was doing it both ways. Branham isn't a disaster on defense by any means, but he's young and he's certainly not a guy that I would be he's one of the better perimeter defenders in the draft. I wouldn't label him as bad either because he tries, but Johnny Davis is a legit two-way guy. You can make an argument that Johnny Davis is the best perimeter defender in the class. I don't know if you would win the argument, but you could certainly argue it. And then on top of it, this is a guy who a lot of people probably worried about his shot selection, his efficiency, but again, contextually, this is a kid who had more on his plate than any other guy. He didn't have great spacing. He had to take these shots in a way that other guys didn't. He didn't have anybody else to rely on to get offense. Like, he had to take those end of shot clock shots. I think those numbers you're going to see them go up. And I think he's got underrated playmaking potential. He made some really impressive reads at times. I mean, even in that Purdue game where he put 37 on Jaden Ivey's head, like, guys loading up on him at the end of the game, knowing that he's killing them the whole game. He made a left-handed live dribble hit to the weak side corner, which his teammate missed, but like, it was a really impressive pass when guys are loading up on him, knowing that he was able to use his scoring to leverage that to make plays for his teammates. So he's got a high IQ, a ridiculous competitive spirit and motor. He measured out really well at the combine, because I thought he was going to measure more like 6'3", and he's 6'5" and a half,
just 6'5".
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so with like a plus wingspan.
Right.
So with those measurements too, you could even see him playing up a little bit. And again, like, because of his defensive potential, he can guard threes, I think. So I have Johnny rated higher. Malachi's not far behind. He's definitely not too far behind on my personal board, but I have Johnny rated higher.
Okay. All right. No, that's good. I mean,
I look at Johnny. Johnny could potentially even play the point guard position. He's that talented. I wouldn't. Everyone got him as a 2 guard, but when today's NBA game, there's no positions, so-called positions, right? So
that's another thing with the point guards, conversation
right.
for the Knicks. It's like, it's not really a lot of traditional point guards. It's like CP3 is really it's a dying breed.
He's the last of
right.
Yeah.
And the way I look at it
That's
too, like,
point.
one of the things that was so intriguing about RJ throughout his whole career, like even in high school, is that he was a guy who handled the ball and ran offense for his teams. He was, a guy, even at Duke, I know that, was he playing with Tyus Jones or Trey? Yeah. He was Tyus.
Trey.
No, he was Trey. Yeah, he was playing with Trey.
It was Trey.
Trey was obviously the point guard, but RJ, he initiated some offense, and I think he had a little bit more of that opportunity this year for the Knicks too. So, I think RJ might be the answer to some of the Knicks point guard answers, right? So, but like you said, I think he's capable of making plays. I don't know if I would want him to do it full time, especially early on in his career. I think it takes a little while for guys like him. If you look at Zach LaVine, Devin Booker, it took them a little while to like respond to NBA defenses and how quick they move and what happens when they're getting doubled and putting 2 on the ball and blitzes and how to make the right reads. That takes a little bit of time, but I do like Johnny, his potential as a playmaker for sure. I think he's got a high IQ.
Right.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I'm really actually pretty worried that a lot of the guys. Well, I'm always worried when it comes to the Knicks, but I'm really worried that a lot of the guys that the Knicks would target at 11 and guys that we look at and say, hey, this player could fit well with the Knicks. We could see how Tibbs might like him. I'm really worried that they're starting to catch the eye of more and more of these teams, because I've seen a lot of mock drafts, and let me tell you, the mock drafts I saw last month compared to the ones I've seen in the last couple of days, Dyson Daniels is gone. Benedict Mathurin is gone. Johnny Davis is gone. It just keeps going and going. And then it makes me think this is why I think it's very interesting, Corey, that you say that this draft may not be as bad as was early predicted and how that narrative is put out there. Because as I'm going, like, you're naming guys like Sim had the show and you just mentioned, Malachi Branham. I didn't even know about that guy. And this guy looks good. Yeah. You got these other guys that people really love, but for whatever reason aren't getting the same type of pub. Like a guy who has shown he's a winner, he's got a great skill set. Ochai Agbaji, that's a guy who looks like he could ball. So there's a lot of guys out there.
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
for sure. He'd be a good pick for the Knicks too. Agbaji to me is like, and this is something I was thinking about recently. Like, why he won a national championship and somehow he's dropped on boards after winning the national championship. And he's getting the same kind of thing happening to him that happened to like Mikal Bridges, that happened to Jalen Brunson, a little bit to Davion Mitchell. I mean, Davion went probably right around the range he should have last year, but online, the dialogue about Davion was that he went too high, and but these guys who prove, hey, I'm a winner. One of the things I've been grappling with in my head, and I was like, I got to figure out a way to write about it in the right way. Is winning a skill? Because there are certain guys that win a lot. There are certain guys that win a lot, right? And so there's got to be something to it. Ochai's won a lot, and he won a national championship, right? And he fits the trend of the modern NBA. Dumb athletic. Like, this dude catches some lobs. 6'6", long, I think he's got a 6'11" wingspan, I think it is. Shoots it, and he's not just a standstill shooter. He's a guy who could shoot it off movement. You can run him off multiple actions. He's a guy that showed major improvement with the ball in his hands, coming off screen, 1-2 dribble pull-ups. Like, he gets better every year. He wins. He could play both ways. He fits the modern NBA. That sounds like a guy I would want to draft. Like, he might not be as sexy as some of these guys with all of this potential, but like once you step on the court, it's like a car. All of a sudden, your value might drop immediately because you're not potential anymore. Now you're a player. Now you're an actual guy who's got to actually produce. It's not the idea of you anymore. Ochai Agbaji is going to be a pro, like, in the NBA for a long time, affecting winning, probably playing on a lot of winning teams. So some people might be like, oh, man, 11, we took Agbaji. He's an older player. He's not going to be a superstar. And it's like, you know what? Most of these players aren't going to be superstars. So, like, if you can get a guy who's going to contribute to winning, like, that's important. Those guys, like, Agbaji is going to make $20 million one day. He's going to be a $20 million a year, player at some point. So, if that was the route that the Knicks went, I don't think it would be something to be disappointed by, because that's the type of guy that, like, you would want. Like, you saw what happened when maybe this is a bad time to bring up Reggie Bullock since he had a terrible game. And he was like 0 for 9, 0 for 11. I don't know. His last game. Forever.
Yeah. Same old Reggie.
Yeah, that's the Reggie.
But that's a guy that helped the Knicks win some games. He's been big for Dallas, and I think Ochai probably has a little bit more potential than Reggie did, because Reggie can't really do anything with the ball in his hands, and I think Ochai has that potential. But like, those kind of guys, they help you win. They might not be the guys that are selling tickets, but they help you win games.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, I think if the Knicks had 1 or 2 of those guys, I think definitely 2. I don't know if 1 would have been enough, but it would have helped. If they had 2 of those guys this year, they probably would have made the playoffs, and maybe some of those games that they wound up losing with those blowout situations, they had big leads and wound up losing, and maybe they wouldn't have lost them, because you got to have those guys that play basketball the right way, good intangibles, all that stuff. I have one last question to you about this draft, only because it's a Knick need. I don't know if the Knicks will actually draft for that. If anything, I think if the Knicks really felt like they needed to get that, they'd probably trade their 11th pick with some other stuff to get it from somewhere in the NBA. But if there was a point guard in this draft that you liked, who is it? Who would it be? Because I'm so torn. I don't know enough about a lot of these guys, and they're not all sexy. Some of them could turn out to be the real deal. It's harder to see it.
Yeah. So I wouldn't take any of these guys at 11. I would trade down, because I don't think there's a point guard in this draft outside of Dyson, who even himself is not like the purest of point guards. He's more of in line with the guys that we mentioned before. But a trade down guy, and he honestly, like, he might be available in the second round, but I think he's a first round talent. I think you could argue that, like, if he went back to school, he'd play himself into the lottery next year. And I had a scout tell me that, like, he was like, low key, this dude is the best prospect on Arizona, and it's Dalen Terry. who is a little bit of a sleeper because he wasn't getting a lot, like as much run throughout the course of the season as he did until Kirk Krissa went down with an ankle injury. And then right at the end of the season into the tournament, Dalen Terry started playing and he was balling out. And this dude is 6'7", 7-foot wingspan. He's a little bit like Dyson Daniels. He's that big jumbo initiator. And the thing that I love about him, you talk about intangibles, he might have the best intangibles in the draft. His energy is made for Madison Square Garden. This dude, like, he gets it rocking with his teammates. Like, this dude always has a smile on his face, infectious energy, and he brings it. And I think he has some of the best passing feel in the entire draft. At 6'7", like, you can make an argument he's the best passer in the draft. Like, I mean, the way he leads guys to a spot, his timing. This kid he's legit. He could hoop for real. His shot's a little funky looking, but it's not broken by any means. He shot 36% for the season, over 40% in the tournament. He reminds me a little bit of Tyrese Halliburton, a little bit. I'm not saying he's going to be able to run a team as a primary guy like Tyrese Halliburton did, but he has some Halliburton in him. And I'm a big fan of this kid.
Wow. Okay. Another guy I'll look into. It's nice to know.
Heard it here first.
So many yeah, you know what I mean? Once again, still Knicks fans. I'm telling you, man. Tune in.
Yes, sir.
His stock is going to rise, man. And then all of a sudden he's like number 9.
Yeah, we know exactly where it started, right? Yeah, man. John, did you have any other questions?
No. I'm good, man. This has been great.
All right, man. Listen, I just want to, thank everybody for tuning in. Once again, we've been chopping it up here with Corey. Is it Tulaba?
That's the Lithuanian pronunciation. Tulaba, either way works.
I mean, if you don't know about me, I try to get pronunciations as close as, that's why I'm over here saying Paolo. Don't mind
I was
me.
about to say that.
I'm rocking with my guy Rokas in Lithuania, so Tulaba's cool.
Nice.
Okay.
What do you think about Rokas?
Right.
Have you seen enough footage of him?
Yeah, I like Rokas. I liked him last year. Yeah. I liked him a lot last year. Especially because he's Lithuanian, so I got a little, pay attention to him a little bit.
Right.
I mean, one, it's apparent the minute you watch him, you're like, wow, this guy looks like Goran Dragic out on the floor, right? But I mean, he's playing in one of the best leagues in the world, and playing exceptionally well in it. There's something to be said for that. Like, I don't know if he's coming over this year or not. Like, I don't know the background there. I know he doesn't really want to come over until he feels he's in a position to, get minutes. Mm-hmm. But I think he is going to be a real guy on the Knicks when he does come over, because he could dribble, pass, shoot. Like, he's a good playmaker. I love lefties. Like, lefties, I always feel like have a little advantage. They're harder to guard. So I'm a fan. I think the Knicks got a haul last year in the draft. They crushed their picks for sure.
Right. He's on the contract for one more year, right? Is that what they're saying about him? He's on the contract for one more year.
I think so. Yeah.
And
I'm sure he has a buyout.
And for what was said, at least I don't know if it's true or not, but obviously we know that he wants to stay there for another year, and I think the Knicks intend to keep him out there for one more year. To see how, because the other thing is, he's doing great things in a smaller sample size because of the minutes, and he's a backup, which is crazy. Yeah. So
that's how it goes there. That's normal. That's normal over there.
So it's cool though. I really like his game. The guy shot 50% from 3. Come on, man. What are we doing here? We got guys who can't shoot 40% from the field on this team. Come on. Anyway. Yeah, man. Once again, I just want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you to the chat. Thank you to people viewing right now. It's a jam-packed night for, Mondays is always like that for Knick content and draft content. And we got the NBA going on right now. This game is a laugher. I don't know if it's like, if you want to watch basketball, this ain't the game for you. It's 69-39. Boston's up. I'm like, I don't know, this is bad.
Yeah, in the third quarter.
Jeez. My goodness. Anyway, so Corey, once again, it's been a pleasure having you. Where can everybody find you? Because you got a lot going on. And are you still doing a lot of YouTube stuff, or are you just mainly doing writing and scouting and all this other stuff? Let us know.
Yeah, for sure. I'm still doing YouTube stuff. I mean, I've been pumping out a lot of stuff on YouTube recently, and I'll keep pumping it up. Tomorrow I have a prospect interview. I interviewed Ryan Rollins from Toledo. He's a guy, I think he could have played his way into the first round after the combine. I'm a big fan. He's probably my favorite player in the draft. He hoops like a New York, like Rucker Park kid. He's from Detroit, but like that's how he hoops. It's just, he's one of those kids where I said, like, you could just watch him play for a minute and know that like he could really hoop. So I got that coming out on the channel tomorrow. And then I'll have, more scouting reports coming out on the channel as well. Some big boards, mock drafts, stuff like that. You could also find me my podcast, the Draft Deck NBA Draft Podcast. That's, Draft Deck like NASDAQ. We kind of have a little play on, the stock market, because, you talk about players' draft stock. So the Draft Deck NBA Draft Podcast, we'll be putting out multiple episodes a week there. You could also, back on YouTube, No Ceilings has a YouTube channel, No Ceilings TV. So I do stuff there. We have a show, myself and my other co-founder, Tyler Rucker. We do a show called On the Clock, which is kind of like PTI, but it's for draft stuff. So we do that once a week there. And then we have, prospect highlight stuff, all of the podcasts in video form from the No Ceilings podcast, from the Draft Deck podcast, all goes there. And then NoCeilingsNBA.com. That's where all the written work is. And we have a team of writers. You mentioned earlier, there's 10 of us on the staff.
Wow. I didn't even know I didn't know there was that many. Jeez.
Yeah, there's 10 people on the staff. We write every single day, Monday through Friday. You could subscribe. It's completely free. If you subscribe, you'll get it delivered to your inbox every Monday, or every Monday through Friday, and sometimes Sundays. So completely free. And if not, you can just go to NoCeilingsNBA.com, and we've written almost 200 unique pieces of draft content this year. So needless to say, I think it's more than any other place you'll find if you're looking for draft content. We've written about literally, I think almost, unless there's some weird, foreign kid from like some country I never heard of, that's, might get his name called on draft night. We've written about everybody. So that's NoCeilingsNBA.com. And if you go there, you'll find everybody's stuff. The team of writers that we've assembled is, there's some really talented dudes who each have their own personalities and their own writing style. So it's a fun read if you go there.
That sounds dope, man. Wow. I mean, you got a lot going on, man. We once again, it's a pleasure to have you, bro. I mean, like I said, I knew you were really knowledgeable and had a lot of draft insight. So definitely have a great opportunity ahead of you, man, because I think you guys with this whole no ceilings thing, because I don't know how long have you, I just went to the website right now, launched 7 months ago. Okay. Cause I think the last time I seen you anywhere when you were talking about draft was last year. So this no ceilings, at least it wasn't even in existence. So, okay, this is great.
No. Yeah. I'll give you the story of how it happened, because we haven't said it anywhere, but I'll drop it for you guys.
Let's go.
So I've been a video editor for Mike Schmitz of ESPN for a couple of years. All the videos that they put out for their draft content on YouTube, I edit for them. So, Mike's my guy. I was doing like one of the guys I met online in the draft space, kid Tyler Rucker. He was somebody we would be going back and forth with intel and the DMs and stuff. Just, what are you hearing about this guy? What are you hearing about that guy? And so we formed like a, relationship online. I had him come on my podcast. He was, I put out a couple of magazines. 2020, I put out a draft magazine. And so I put out a couple of issues. He wanted to put out a draft guide. So he was asking for like opinions and help. And then one night, during Summer League, I got a text from Mike Schmitz. I'm like, I was hanging out with your guy Rucker last night. And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, that's my boy. I didn't know you were cool with him. He's like, yeah, I know him. So I hit him up. I was like, I didn't know you were cool with Schmitz. He's like, yeah, that's my guy. So we hopped on a podcast like a week later, and he was like, yo, Schmitz told me, Schmitz said we should link up and we should do something together. And I was like, that's funny. I was about to ask you if you wanted to do something. So we started getting to talking. And then I have a weird brain where I can't just do something like simple, like, oh, let's, do a podcast together or something. I'm like, let's build out like a multimedia platform with a team. So people that I had worked with through, people who had written for my magazine, I reached out to, just people I respected. And we built this team throughout the course of the year. It started with 8. We added a couple other writers in the middle of the cycle. And now, we got 10 writers, and we got front offices following it. They're subscribed to it. We got, it's crazy how much success that we've had. But that's the power of community and like the power of linking up with people, because it was all people. We were all trying to do it separate, and there's something to be said for how like strength in numbers, so if people see this big collective and it's intriguing. You're able to pump out content to one space more often. It's less of a burden, less stressful. It's a ton of work still, because like I said, my mind goes a million different places and I have these ideas that I got to execute. So it's maybe even more work, but it's been fun, man. It's good to work with other people, because you get to bounce ideas off of them and see their perspective, and it helps you become better at what you do, because talent evaluation is tough. Sometimes you get you'll be biased against a prospect. I don't like this kid. Somebody sees something and you're like, and they'll be like, I love this kid and this is why. And you can kind of talk it out and meet somewhere in the middle and not be so hard headed. So it's been cool. It's been a fun experience. And I think, we're going to have some cool stuff coming out soon for sure. Some merch drop, draft guide, physical copy, digital copy coming out soon. So be on the lookout for that stuff. In the next week, we're probably going to announce it and drop everything, put it for sale. So it's going to be cool.
Super dope.
Man, that's
super
dope. That's dope. Yeah, man, that's great.
Yeah,
what a wonderful story. I like that. And that's the type of stuff, like, just real quick before we get out of here, like John and I, we put this whole thing together. We've been chopping it up and doing this. And then we got Jose involved, and it's like, it's been a collective. We've been doing it, the three of us. And fortunately, because of, just happenstance, running into people, going to an NBA draft party, meeting NothinButKnicks, meeting, these different people. Like, you meet all these people in the Knicks community. And even though we all have our different shows, we still sometimes come together, and we support each other. So it's a real good vibe. And also, we have another show that we do on NothinButKnicks Network called the NBA Report. And that's all just because of happenstance, just running into Sim and going to the draft party and just, collectively talking about things. So I think that makes a lot of sense, man. When you kind of work together, you can build and make even better things. Yeah, it's very smart. Great job.
Yeah. Teamwork makes the dream work, man. That's the saying, right?
It's so true.
I'm with you on that, man.
But also, it definitely inspires, right? As you start to build, and even though you said it's a lot of work getting there, but it inspires you to continue to do more and more as you move on in the process. So it's always great.
For sure.
It's always great to see.
For sure, man. And
ground up.
Wow.
I love what you guys are doing too, man. And especially
Appreciate
in this community, the Knicks community, to me, it's my favorite community. I know I'm a Bulls fan, but I feel like the Knicks community has really adopted me, in a big way, because they were really the reason I got like a little bump in where I was as somebody who was just doing this online, to where big and small, I was invited on platforms everywhere. And, I know I don't say no to anybody ever, because, I think that, there's talent all over and people just need to get a start. So I'll say yes to be on anybody's show and lend my time, because I know that sometimes I reach out to people and people won't, answer me. They'll ghost me, right? So I know what that's like. But
Right.
Steve Popper at Newsday during COVID, he did a feature on me that led to Alan Hahn interviewing me on his show, and then I linked up with CP at some point on KnicksFanTv. But even like I said, small content creators everywhere. And what I think is so cool is that like guys like Alan Hahn, like Steve, who have these big platforms, they're willing to mix it up and chop it up with people who, most people would just brush off. Like, I was doing stuff in my kitchen. I'm doing stuff in my kitchen, in my living room, I don't have a big production team behind me. I was just a kid doing YouTube videos. I barely knew what I was doing when they kind of like, took a likening to me. So I think that's inspiring too, because these are guys who are still, even though they've reached a point where like, Alan's on ESPN every morning, with like Jay Williams and, so he doesn't have to do stuff like that, but he still chops it up with the community, with the Knicks community. Like most people don't do that. Most communities don't have people like that. It's, those are just media guys. The Knicks community is tight knit in a really special way, like all over, big and small. So, it's my favorite community, and I don't see that from many other teams. I think Knicks fans are leading the way, like in a major way. So, it's cool. It's cool to see.
Oh, and that's why we will never lose New York, regardless of who's playing in here. We will never lose New York. It's not gonna happen.
Ever.
Sorry, Brooklyn.
You can't give John. You give him a layup, man. He's gonna dunk it. Or,
I'm gonna dunk it.
Put it up. You're gonna dunk it.
Don't toss it up.
Don't worry. I like dunking on the Nets too. Don't worry.
Well, I mean, thank you, Corey. Once again, I appreciate it. Listen, you're right. The community is great, and it's been great for us. And I thank you, because as soon as I reached out, you didn't hesitate. You got right back to me, and you were able to do it. And I really appreciate it. Believe me, we thank you for your time, and we'd love to chop it up with hey, come on, let's do the thing. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man, we would love to chop it up with you again in the future. I know you're going to be really busy, and as you get closer to the draft, it probably is going to get even more busy. Maybe we can hook back up after the draft once things are said and done and players are where they need to be, and we can kind of chop it up again if you'd like to do that.
Absolutely. You let me know when. I'll be there. All
right, that sounds great, man. Nice. Well, thank you once again for being here, man. You have a great night. I hope everything goes well for you. I hope you're the one who breaks that guy that no one else was talking about, and then you get the credit, bro.
Me too.
That's that Dallin Terry. I already see it.
There you go.
Coming.
Ryan Rollins, Jake LaRavia, those are my guys this time.
Although I will tell you, my guy D Poetic on our draft show, he's been highlighting Ryan Rollins and Jake LaRavia. He loves that guy as second round guys that the Knicks should look at. So yeah.
They call them sleepers.
Good. Yeah, they're good. I'm luckily enough, I got to spend time with Jake for a couple of days, watch him work out and get to know him a little bit, and he's gonna make it. He's got the right mentality for sure.
Wow. Okay.
Very nice.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good, man. Well, we'll catch you on the next one, man. Thank you so much for being here, bro. You have a great rest of your night. I'm gonna just close out the show with John, and man, I wish you the best, bro. But thank you for doing this once again.
And my pleasure, fellas. I appreciate you having me on.
No problem, man.
No problem.
So, John, listen, man, this has been another great show. We had another great guest. I'm excited. And I think that the draft is going to be a fun time for everybody, even though it's not going to be as exciting as last year when we had more picks and the finagling and the wheeling and dealing. But you never know what could happen. Anyway, you got any final words, brother?
We may just take that one draft pick, match it, maximize it, make it into 3 or 4 draft picks. We never know. In the second round, like we did the year before, that was a weird one, wasn't it? Everyone was like, we had 2 draft picks. We were going to use them, and then we went everything over. But we'll see how this all lands. Like always, And I always say, stay blessed. I'm looking forward to the next one. And yeah, that's all I got, man. Appreciate all the love.
I'm with you, man. I just want to, before I say my goodbyes, want to say salute to Sam Granderson. I see you in the chat. Sheldon NorCal, I see you. I think Gene Mark is in the chat. Nothing but Knicks. Sim has been jumping back and forth because there's Nick content going on his channel too. Quality Jumper. Knicks for Life, my man Chuck Allen. Yankees Morning Brew. I see you, brother. My man Heck. D Coolest 718 in the building. Soul Finger. Almighty Finesse. B Willis. Thank you guys, man. I know some of you tuned in late. This is a really good one. Very informative. You know, just watch the show again, man. Run it from the top, man, because there's some gems in here that you don't want to miss. Yeah, man. There's some guys that you may or may not know about, and the guys you do know about, you get a little bit more insight about. So definitely watch that replay, man. Thank you once again. Tell a friend who tells a friend who tells another friend. Still Knicks fans. We'll be back again. We'll catch you on the next one. And let me not forget to say what's up to my man Jose, holding us down on the ones and twos.
As always. Yes.
Yes, sir. We'll catch you guys, man. Look, next show will be Thursday. NBA report on Nothing But Knicks. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned.